This is Odessa. In an effort to throw a surprise for my sister at her engagement party, I braved a 9-hour drive in a snowstorm while holding a cake and hoping for the best. Everyone stared at me as if I were a storm when I stepped in. Though, my name was removed off the guest list. They made fun of my crash, and they told me untruths. What are your options when the people you've always looked out for reveal they have no intention of doing the same for you? Please remain. Reason being, that night they forgot more than just the cake. If you've ever felt like an outsider within your own family, share your experience in the comments. Additionally, make sure you subscribe to get the next part. Surviving the snowstorm was less difficult than dealing with family issues. As I sped away from the city shortly after sunrise, I could see the skyline dwindling in the rearview mirror. An insulated, towering white bakery box took up most of my trunk space. After hearing from Venna that strawberry champagne cake was her favorite, I placed my order a week in advance and paid the extra fee to have it baked fresh that morning. I drove 9 hours through snow and treacherous roads just so I could see her face as I entered the room. Despite her best efforts to conceal it, she was actually my younger sister. At one point, I changed into my high heels in the restroom of a gas station where I had stopped for gas and hot coffee. My coat was as snug as a damp blanket around me. A smile spread across my face as I kept telling myself, this is worth it. Even if the wind had made my cheeks red, she is valuable. When I finally arrived at the upstate estate, the gravel road was coated with fresh snow and my tires were grinding on it as string quartets barely echoed from the main hall. The mansion loomed like a bridal fairy tale. With golden lights curled along the wrought iron gates, I was thinking, this is going to be so memorable, but it won't be at all as I expected. He gave me 2 sidelong glances as I gave the valet my keys. Let me guess, are you in the catering business? Assuming he was joking, I laughed courteously. No, I am related. Despite the warm, rose and vanilla-scented air within, the icy wind from outside clung to my spine. I was unwelcomed, with their mouths clenched. Women in pastel dresses peered over their shoulders. I entered the room with the cake box as if it were a peace offering. Taking a deep breath, then I beheld Venna, with her exquisitely curled hair, dressed in a silk pink gown. Until she noticed me, she was giggling at a groomsman's whisper. She flinched and her expression darkened. So, you showed up, I responded. I drove all day, attempting to seem more carefree than I actually was. Holy cow, not even picking up the box did she do it. I really doubted that you would be able to survive this weather. Placed delicately on the side table, adjacent to trays of little macarons, I placed the cake. It was me. I would not leave you out if you were to get engaged. She cocked her head to the side, and I could hear a bridesmaid bend in behind her and murmur softly. Had she not been included in the roster, I made an effort not to jump. But then I noticed it. Venna's face betrayed no surprise, but rather cold, calculating. After quietly saying, I'll be right back, she slipped into a side hallway. People poured by me as if I were a decorative element, and I did nothing. Mom, clad in a navy and pearl ensemble, was waiting for me by the hearth with a forced grin. She kissed the air and begged, please, don't make this about you. Today is all about Venna. I made myself laugh. Sure thing, she scowled as she looked at the damp bottom of my coat. The fiancé of Venna went by. I grinned at the man. He hardly nodded. As I continued to explore the house, I came across several framed engagement photos. I wasn't in any of them. A round of laughter were heard by the dessert table. Attractiveness for dramatic situations. Someone in every household has one. Perhaps she sees this as her own personal rehearsal supper. Not even whispering was an effort on their part. In order to deposit my belongings, I located the coat room. An elaborate platter bearing the words bridal party gifts caught my eye as I peered inside. Handwritten cards, dazzling jewels, and 10 boxes were found, 0 mention of my name. Sitting on the adjacent bench, I took deep breaths out. Finally, my phone went off, an email sent to a class. The bridal party of Venna I had no business being involved. Perhaps I was unintentionally included. Perhaps fate decreed that I should be told the truth. There was one message that jumped out. It had a timestamp from earlier in the day. She isn't stylish enough. The list was, shall we say, extensive. This message was sent by the phone associated with Venna. There was a parchedness in my throat. My eyelids pricked up. I re-entered the frigid air, inhaling its chill as if it could dull my senses. I froze for an instant, gazing at the snowbanks. There was no miscommunication here. He had a strategy. Access the following chapter using this link. A voice yelled from behind me just as the icy air was beginning to cool my face. That was the voice I relied on the most. Not a single chair. As I stood in the hallway, phone in hand, the blue light of the group text revealing the holes in my heart. The chill from the outside clung to my coat, not the snow, but the words engraved into the thread made my fingers shiver. The words of Venna. I continued to stare. Trying to force myself to look away, I proceeded to delete the mail without responding. However, the harm had already been done. Even when the television went black, the statements would reverberate in my head for quite a while. Returning to the main dinner hall, I pursed my lips, took a long breath, and stood up, attempting to discover a gate that would not jolt me into a world that had previously turned its back on me. I walked more slowly this time. With the volume up, the bass subtly reverberated through the rooms, creating an exquisite medley fit for a party. In the furthest corner, surrounded by a glittering champagne tower, Venna and her bridesmaids erupted in laughter. Even with her back to me, her smile remained visible. I was not interested. Silk runners, candles that flickered in the candlelight, and beautifully printed name cards adorned the tables that stretched throughout the magnificent room. Even after going over each one twice, I couldn't find my name. Not a single change. Not a single typo. One seat was vacant at a table adjacent to the dessert stand. Clutching the folded coat tightly, I cautiously approached it, hoping for the best. Unfortunately, a waitress stepped in with a fake grin and informed me that the seat belonged to the DJ's assistant right as I was about to take it, with a forced smile that pretends everything is fine when in fact it isn't. I silently nodded. Therefore, I stood alone in the corner, squeezing solace out of it. I gripped a plastic cup with both hands after filling it with water from the refreshment table. The projection screen displaying the photo slideshow was directly visible to me from my vantage point. Images of a young Venna were shown, celebrating her birthday, dancing her heart out, and embracing her prom pals. I was not included in a single image. It would have been better if I had been cut from her story. Someone casually walked past me, accidentally bumping into my elbow, and didn't even bother to apologize. I inched closer to the boundary wall. Not even the wall could compete with the warmth of these humans. Out of everyone who saw me, only Aunt Claire paid me any attention. In a dress that was far too tight for her age and an overpowering scent that almost made me gag. She made a brief appearance as she gently touched my arm. She told me that I should make an effort to be happy for my sister. Now is her chance to shine. Give it to her already, nodding in my throat. I too swallowed my pride. The answer was an emphatic yes from me. The grin I forced on her, though, was honed over years of family gatherings where keeping up appearances was essential. Even if my response had been genuine, she had already moved on, so it was pointless. Tonight, nobody paid attention. Once again, the pain behind my eyes flared up. It was blinked away by me twice. However, I caved on the third occasion. Quietly, I went to locate the corridor that led to the restrooms and excused myself. I sat with my coat still tightly clasped in my arms, back against the frigid wall. After locking the door to the stall, at first, the tears came slowly, leaving scorching streaks on my icy cheeks. No, I refrained from crying. I remained silent. I simply seeped out. Similar to a faucet that had been quietly dripping for a long time without anyone noticing, my time spent sitting there is a mystery to me. Nevertheless, I mustered the courage to wipe my face with the sleeve of my coat, inhaled deeply, and gradually rose to my feet. That deep breath you take just before charging back into fight, well aware that you have little chance of winning, but still unwilling to accept defeat quietly on my approach back to the ballroom. I veered off the path I had originally intended to follow and ended up in a service hallway that I had completely missed. I had to take a moment to orient myself because the walls were so much closer together here, lined with food trays and wheeled carts. Then I heard it. Howling laughter, recognizable giggling, coming next. A voice. The voice of Venna. I froze. She was chatting with someone. Perhaps Blythe. Just around the corner. Their voices were carefree, a little inebriated, and then, my name, I heard. Tragedies shed light. Still, I remained motionless. My breathing stopped. From around the corner, their voices echoed off the kitchen tile, their silhouettes on the linoleum, with Venna's locks swaying in time to her champagne-filled hand signals, and Blythe seated on a stool, her legs drooping idly, were all visible to me. According to Blythe, it's hard to imagine she drove all the way here, like a flame waiting for gasoline. Laughter was already curled in her voice. Without wasting a second, Venna responded. During a blizzard for 9 hours, why, just for a pitiful cupcake. The snort that Blythe let out was a vicious, pointed one. She has perpetually craved the spotlight. Oh my goodness, what if she had crashed en route? Something about Venna's laugh was more pointed and hurtful than I had anticipated. Silence and empathy would have been helpful. To be honest, the subsequent laughter they exchanged reverberated. Brutal wasn't even close. This was done before, as if I were to be exposed at the first provocation. I cautiously retreated. I was unconcerned with my destination. It was only that I needed some distance, as I stumbled into the washroom, shut the stall, and finally allowed myself cry uncontrollably. I turned along a hallway that smelled like cleaning bleach and rosemary. I wanted to yell, "I want answers," or "I want out of here," and hurl that cake across the room. This time, though, I refrained. Rather, I wished my tears would stop by pressing the back of my hand against my mouth. Someone tapped on my pocket-sized phone. A single alert, an announcement regarding the weather. Nobody at the party has sent a single message. Not a confirmation. Please don't think of it as a, "Hey, where are you?" passed down by my mom. Completely null. For the sake of certainty, I nevertheless retrieved our text conversation. It was my message that was sent last. I have just arrived. Delighted to finally meet everyone. Someone had read it. I got no response. On autopilot, my fingers flicked through previous messages. I paused at a Christmas picture from the past, Venna receiving a present. From behind her, our mom is grinning. At the edge, I was somewhat cropped out. Birthdays that were unobserved lingered in my memory. Moving into my dorm at university, the day my roommate's parents delivered decorations and my own mom greeted me at the curb with an embrace and a "make us proud" sign. What about last year? When I was promoted, it was completely absent from the family newsletter, that yoga studio flyer featuring Venna. Though, entire paragraph, though. My face was wiped, observed my reflection back at myself, dry red eyes. Tense jaw, everything in my chest felt solid. I sneaked into the kitchen on my way back to the hall, hoping no one would catch on. The cake was still there, exactly where I'd left it, tightly sealed in the silver container, and I chose the one with the golden ribbon at 1 a.m. the night before. I lifted the cover and gazed at it in astonishment. with a fondant banner reading, "To love, to laughter, to forever," and sugared violets adorning the 3 layers of a beautiful lemon cake. Not a single thing was off. Leaved alone, placed it on the countertop. My server noticed me. "My apologies. Madam, no outsiders are welcome. It's only that I'm going," I whispered. "It works." I cut him off before he finished. As I zipped my coat around my shoulders, I made my way through the service exit. Stepping into the snow, I felt the wind bite my cheeks, but it was less painful than what I had just heard. I made it to my vehicle, got in, and sat down, only to look down at my phone once again. I have 14 unanswered calls from known numbers. But at this point, it made no difference. I switched it off and threw it onto the passenger seat. I stayed out that night. I stayed at a roadside motel, paid with cash, and hid my identity. I lay in bed, clothes still on, watching TV as I waited for the pain of my broken heart to subside. I listened to the soft hum of the air conditioner as I perched on the bedside table, gazing at the floral wallpaper, despite the biting cold weather outside. By my side, the remote remained unmoved. Nothing would entice me to turn on the TV. I am not in the mood to see a comedy or a drama. On the contrary, I mentally replayed that exchange that took place in the corridor. I could feel the sharpness of every word Venna had spoken. How many times had I assumed the best of her intentions, even though I didn't understand her decisions? How often had I supported them on her behalf? I drove through snowstorms. I was warned that I wasn't wanted, yet she couldn't even answer the phone. Even still, I clung to the hope that this wasn't her true identity. However, I was already aware in my heart. Indeed, it was. Scratchy cuddled up against my arms under the motel comforter while I whispered to the ceiling, "What the fuck am I doing here?" I got no response. The only sound is the wind outside, which seems to be trying to remind me by rattling the window pane. Looking in had always been my position. The curtains of the motel failed to shield much of the sunshine. Still dressed from the previous night, I felt bewildered as I woke up, my coat clinging to the chair with the slight scent of buttercream and snow. Missed calls and unread texts kept flashing on my phone. With a deliberate rise to my feet, I steadied myself and retrieved it from the side table, not out of worry, but because of what I anticipated would be there. "You made Venna feel ashamed. What gives? Why would you just disappear with the cake? Theatricality has always been your strong suit. Is everything all right?" Not a single message inquired, with chilly glass striking numb fingertips. I scrolled further. Messages continued to pour in. "You always make everything about you," added a cousin from whom I hadn't heard for 2 years. Her night had come. The one that really sickened me came next. "Hey, Mom, I saw you in the family chat. Recently, she has been emotionally unstable. Simply allow her some room." With that, the plot thickened. I couldn't bear to be around other people's happiness. So I showed up, made a big deal out of it, and then rushed away. Following the snowstorm, no one brought up the fact that I had brought a homemade cake. Surprisingly, nobody inquired about the violent things I overheard. My departure was a mystery to everyone. Due to the fact that the solution was too cumbersome, someone has to be the bad guy. Surprisingly, everyone seems to have nominated me. The photo from the celebration was posted on Instagram by Venna by mid-morning. For 1 whole minute, I just stared at it, with her bridesmaids encircling her in coordinating white faux fur shawls. She stood radiant. A hash-blessed, hash-engaged life. The caption read, "Describing an ideal evening spent with loved ones. You can't see me in the photo. No one tagged me. Not even a footnote mentioned me. When I saw a message from a long-lost acquaintance, I blinked. You were invited to the party. Weren't you? If you were to say no, Venna would be right. Are you okay?" It went unanswered. I did nothing but gaze at the computer as I realized the rewriting had already started. Their desire for my departure wasn't the only one. I was their target for erasure, while sitting in that inexpensive motel bed. With the springs of the mattress visible through the linens, I allowed my memories to unravel. I graduated from high school, refrained from including a family photo, my initial dwelling, just a housewarming present. Finally, my birthday, a souvenir card, no signature. I knew this beforehand. It had only recently become apparent, like dust in sunshine, because it was second nature. I took my time packing as a tissue wiped off the bathroom counter. I drove past the estate again before I left town. The snow had been plowed away as if the previous night hadn't occurred, optimistically unaware. Lights continued to jingle on the trees in front. I pulled over to the side of the road and gazed up at the structure. I could still make out its outline via a side window close to the kitchen. That cake tin. The package is still sealed, completely unspoiled. I used the glass to take a picture. For the sake of peace, not retribution, just in case. The question of whether it was indeed so terrible may arise at a later date. It was critical that I could respond positively. Indeed, it was. Now look at this. This is what you missed. I checked my voicemail after returning to my car and plugging in my phone. Venna left one message and 14 unanswered calls. Listen, we should have this conversation behind closed doors. You were overly sensitive. I left it in there. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, lighting up the snowbank next to my car with its long blue shadows, I did nothing but sit and let it sit. I failed to return her call. I grinned. Nevertheless, after a long time, why? Because I had no intention of continuing to justify my actions. It is best to let them speak. Let them contort. Their version had already been written. I felt prepared to write mine now. Outside my apartment window, I could see crusty slush patches where the snow had melted a little bit overnight, sitting at the kitchen table. I remained in my pajamas and leggings, with a mug of iced coffee at my side. Although I had no intention of doing so, I could no longer remain silent in her face. I quickly accepted the terms and placed my phone on top of the sugar container. As soon as Venna's name appeared on the screen, she appeared when the screen flickered. Her hair retains the gentle curl from last night, and her mascara is still adhered to her lashes. She is also perfectly groomed. Excellently chosen, as always. She spoke before I could even speak, saying, "You chose the most bizarre time to ghost. Curious minds want to know." Silence engulfed me. Venna lowered her voice as she drew nearer to her camera. "It seems like you can't help but overreact every time. You tend to be overly sensitive. No one cared about you this weekend, yet..." I maintained my silence. Silence, I had discovered, made people uneasy. "I didn't intend for you to hear anything," she went on, as if it would somehow ameliorate the situation. "When I'm anxious, you know exactly how I act. Things I say are foolish. Blythe was merely making a joke. You misconstrued its meaning." She seemed to be waiting for me to feel guilty or forgive her. My back straightened, and I uttered my first word, "Venna." I almost died on the way there. A blink escaped her. A blizzard was a haze as I drove. Yes, I did bring the cake I had purchased weeks ago. I was soaked, chilly, and completely worn out. However, I turned up. In exchange, all I got was you making fun of me after I crashed. Considering how much easier it would have been to remain silent, it's unfair. No. I cut her off while maintaining eye contact. "Unfair treatment at your event is what you should expect. Missing seat, images not included. Complete lack of response. You treated me like a spot on your immaculate white dress. You removed me from your engagement." Scowling, she dismissed it. The one she lets out when she feels cornered. It's become something substantial because of you. It's not me who's bad here. I arched an eyebrow. "Then come clean about it." Venna's face became more angular. My moment is about to be ruined by you. What you're doing is making it look bad. Calmly, I admitted that I am not making anything. You can no longer alter the reality. I've had enough of it. Once again. She began to speak over me, moves more quickly now. With an overwhelming need to regain command of the conversation, I remained on the line. I muted her, she said, for 30 seconds. I pretended not to hear her as I stared at the TV. All she did was wave her hands, her jaw clenched and her gaze untamed. Then it hit her I wasn't responding. I cut the call short. Keep it light. Everything is calm. A simple button push. She experienced the sensation of speaking into thin air for the first time. I opened my email after staring at the empty screen for a while. My catering invoice is attached. No clutter in the topic line. Payment confirmation. Delicious cake. The engagement of Venna. There was a single statement in the email's body. I have attached the cake receipt for your reference. It was the one that was abandoned. Mom got it from me, regarding Aunt Delia. For Venna. An immediate response was received at Mom's address. Very few words. Odessa. This isn't being helpful. With a slow exhalation, I reclined in my chair. There was no need to apologize. Absence of ownership. Here we go again. Trying to divert attention from what really mattered. I was attempting to assert my adulthood. But I was no longer 15 years old. Nobody showed up to the celebratory dinner when I got my first job. I wasn't even 22 yet. And I was desperately seeking acceptance. I had stopped pleading. I had the camera rolling. Finally, their carefully orchestrated quiet gave way to the truth. And more mail had arrived in my inbox by the time I had completed my second mug of coffee on Monday morning. The topic, this is sufficient. In the words of my mom, upon opening it, I anticipated yet another icy scolding. But this was distinct. Calm down. It doesn't bother me. Calculated. It started with you embarrassing our family enough. To have even been invited is a blessing. Then, put envy aside and don't destroy Venna's future. Underneath her message, she had attached a screenshot from a closed group chat called Family Core Planning Only. Obviously, I had no part in it. Oh, I thought they were referring to me. She is not well, Venna had written. Things are always twisted because of her. Patiently hold on. She'll make it into a sad tale. A thumbs up was Mom's response. Our attempt to incorporate her was acknowledged by Blythe. Everything is always made more dramatic by her. Storylines were already circulating like mildew under the floorboards, traceable, unclean, and silent. Moreover, a paper trail was presented. Not only was the betrayal shocking, but so was the seeming lack of spontaneity. They apparently had plans B in case I was an issue. And when I failed to provide them with one, they made one up, with my laptop in my lap. I reclined. Beside me, the radiator hissed steadily and slowly. At that same second, I had a revelation. I felt no more pain. Awake I was. My colleague in the office sent me a message on Slack at about noon. Hey, I wanted to let you know that someone provided a screenshot of an Instagram post regarding the sister of a bride who had a breakdown. Is it so? That's you? When I felt that, my heart rate increased. In order to find Venna's profile, I went to Instagram. She shared a selfie of herself laughing and holding champagne that had been pastel filtered. Real love shines through, even when jealousy wears a familiar face. The caption said, her tagging was unnecessary. Even worse, her intended target would have been obvious to everyone in her inner circle, including me. A bridesmaid at a recent upstate celebration contributed a brief anonymous story alongside the photo, which a local wedding gossip blog reposted. The account described a family member who showed up unannounced, demanded attention, and then had a breakdown before disappearing. Parchness set in. This was no longer a domestic dispute. Everything changed once this became public knowledge. A scream eluded me. Nothing was thrown. Rather than that, I went to my desktop and opened a clearly named folder called Truth. Aside from the cake's receipt and images of the snow-covered roads, there was also a video of the unopened box seen through the window and screenshots of messages that were never meant for me to discover. I uploaded 3 photos to Instagram. The cake, illuminated by the snow in the kitchen, and my windshield, encrusted in frost from 9 hours of driving. I snapped this candid selfie just outside the arena, holding the cake box, with wet hair and scarlet cheeks. The caption I made, "You have to be there for the individuals who wouldn't trash your name off a sidewalk sometimes." However, that is the process by which one gains knowledge. You do some things because you adore them. When things happen, you learn who's deserving of it. Not long after the comments began coming in, around 2 hours, I disabled them. A few are encouraging, a few perplexed. Some want the complete account. I felt nervous about handing it over. However, I had already provided them with sufficient. Following this, I accessed my Gmail, started a fresh message, and sent a PDF of the chat screenshot along with the Instagram post. Whose turn is it, the public relations team of the corporation where the fiancé of Vina worked? No remark was included on my part. Exactly what is needed. Allow him to witness the construction of his carefully crafted falsehoods if he desired a marriage founded on them. No retaliation, I muttered. The repercussions are clear. I was greeted with another ping from my phone that night as the snowflakes fluttered softly outside my window. Some words on paper, given by Blythe. I didn't tell you this, but the engagement dinner with Vina's parents has been rescheduled, claimed that an issue arose. I chose not to answer. Really? It was unnecessary. I drew the heavy blanket over my legs, lighted a candle, and curled up on my couch. I felt nothing like the storm in the novel. For once, I was like a cloud breaking apart, as if nothing had happened. Saturday morning showed up, adorned in brightness. It was there the second I entered Aunt Ray's house. Though, there was that static electricity, the kind that buzzes just before a bolt of lightning cracks the sky. She whispered and gently squeezed my shoulder as I arrived at the door. You must not allow them to diminish you. A breakfast theater was housed within, salads of cut melons and pastries set on white dishes. An excess of individuals wearing sweaters of a cream hue. Tension was still detectable despite the syrup's aroma. I found a seat by the window, out of the way of anyone who would choose not to meet my gaze. Nobody did, as usual. Vina took center stage at the far end of the dining room. Holding a champagne flute, she tapped her glass and grinned like a politician. I only wished to express. It was as if honey were oozing from a spoon as she began to speak. The beauty of a family unit that prioritizes love above ego has been brought to my attention this week. That was it. The shaft, no rough spots, worked on. It is toxic. Somebody chuckled anxiously. My attention was briefly drawn to me. My orange juice was savored by me. She had me at not hearing the tone beneath her words. I had had enough of that, with poise and purpose. I rose to my feet. Would you mind if I also say something? A blink escaped her. Uncle Ray's fork came to a halt in the air, as if in a fog. Silence spread across the table. For the gathering, I endured a snowfall that lasted 9 hours. I started, along with the cake I bought, which went uncut in the kitchen as my purportedly loving friends and family made fun of the idea that I would die in a car accident. Oh my goodness, a little of Blythe's mimosa went down her throat. My mom's face seemed lifeless. I raised my hand, but Vina's mouth remained open, not to quiet her, but to hold the floor, for once only. Oh, Vina, I heard you, both of you. Blythe, heading towards the kitchen. joking about how calm it would be if I just didn't come up, in an effort to gather herself. She shook her head. You were in Odessa, extracted from its original setting. Then I cut her off. My phone was retrieved by me, got it unlocked, and pressed play. As they giggled, the room echoed with their sound, an undeniably Vina voice. Was it 9 hours? To what end an empathic cupcake? Following that, Blythe, who was laughing uncontrollably. She could have crashed. Just think of the compassion, the stillness. 2. There. I put it on hold. That is the setting, I whispered. The fiancé of Vina seems taken aback, as if he had never seen her before. He blinked at her. My mom went for her glass of wine. She was completely undefended. Certainly not. Vina remained still. Fists clenched in mute terror. Subsequently, she sprang toward me. This is not yours to manipulate. Finally, she lost her temper. Still clutching my phone, I retreated a step. As soon as you chose shame over truthfulness, you twisted it because you are envious. I referred to you as such. Hers was a sharp, low word. Wow. I caught you in your deceit. A louder voice echoed my response. Your plot really required a villain, but you completely overlooked the cost of creating one. Changes were noticeable in the atmosphere. There was a light air of quiet. It had a point, using blades, real. Dessert was not on my agenda. Aunt Ray discreetly trailed behind me, resting a hand on my back. As I made my way to the door, even though it was barely audible, her voice weighed like a boulder. My darling, you didn't only exonerate yourself, all of the script was destroyed by you. It went unanswered. I chose not to. Jump to the following chapter. I returned home to find the stillness that they had left behind. However, I was no longer by myself. The last wind before stillness lingered in the air, and the echo of Vina's words lingered behind me. It was a restless night for me. Something had changed inside of me, and it wasn't because I was nervous. Dispute resolved. The storm you remember isn't the one you walk through when it's so fierce and you come out standing. It's the emptiness that follows. 3 alerts greeted me on Saturday morning before I had even gotten out of bed. I hadn't heard from my long-lost childhood neighbor, Monica, in a long time. But she sent the first one. Have you listened? She was the author. The engagement feast has been postponed. His folks, sometimes, the loudest thing you can say is nothing at all. That weekend wasn't just about a cake or a party. It was a revelation about how far we'll go to earn love from people who've already decided we don't belong, about how deep the betrayal can cut when it comes from those who were supposed to know your heart best. But here's the truth. I walked away with, you are not dramatic for wanting to be treated with dignity. You are not selfish for showing up and expecting the bare minimum of respect, and you are certainly not unlovable just because others can't or won't see your worth. I didn't burn the house down. I simply stopped hiding the smoke. If you've ever had to sit through a storm just to see who was standing with you after, tell me about it in the comments. I'm here, and I'm listening. And if stories like these speak to something inside you, hit that like button. Subscribe for the next chapter, and share this with someone who needs to hear it, because sometimes healing begins when we tell the truth out loud. Take care of yourself, and until next time, see you soon.